So it's lovely to come and talk to you all today, and we really appreciate this opportunity. And I know we've been trying to contact the Parkinson's societies for a while, so it's brilliant that we have this chance to talk to you today. So my name's Michelle, and my colleagues can introduce themselves. We've been working together with CardMedic, and we'll tell you about that. Then we want to ask your advice about the cards, the messages that we're developing, and to ask for your views. So I was a speech and language therapist working in the NHS, mainly with children, but also sometimes with adults, but mainly children. And I retired, and I teach signing still online at the moment. And I joined the CardMedic project about 18 months ago. We all three of us did as volunteers. Alex, do you want to say about yourself?
Yes, so I also joined the CardMedic group as a volunteer. Is it really 18? It can't be, it's not 18 months ago, is it? Good Lord. So sorry. So time has flown. I'm also a speech and language therapist. I run a small charity called include.org, which aims to break down barriers for people with understanding and speaking difficulties or communication difficulties. So that's the role that I got involved in CardMedic in. And this is my first time in a group, so thank you very much for making us welcome. I think Michelle's going to be taking the lead, and we're going to be backup. We're going to be the reserves, I think.
Yeah.
Nadia, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Nadia. I'm also a speech and language therapist, and I work with children. And like Alex and Michelle, I joined CardMedic about 18 months ago as a volunteer. And we're just like a little CardMedic family, aren't we, Alex and Michelle? Yes, so thank you. Yeah, thank you for letting us join you on this group. It's the first time I'm involved in this in the user group. So I'm looking forward to hearing your responses. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we've never any of us met in person. We all live in different parts of the country, so it's been. But the wonders of Zoom, we have met very, very frequently on Zoom. I'm going to share a very short introduction, and then we'll go into the cards that we want to show you. So hopefully you can see this.
We can see that.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. That's fantastic. So this was ourselves, introducing ourselves. So you will recall when the coronavirus pandemic started, well, it was March really, wasn't it, last year, that all the staff in the hospitals particularly had to wear a lot of PPE, and immediately it was apparent that there was a communication problem. And this communication problem was between the staff in the hospitals and the patients, particularly in intensive care, but really all over the hospitals, and then the clinics and the GPs and then everywhere really. We all have to wear masks, don't we? So this is a problem about speaking and then people hearing you clearly. And we've all been battling with this. So the CardMedic project, what's it about? So on the left here, you can see a picture of Rachel Grimaldi, who's an anaesthetist. And at the time of the pandemic, she was on maternity leave with her third child. And she saw her colleagues in hospital struggling to communicate. And you can see in the photograph of an intensive care unit here, that the staff here, whether they're doctors or nurses, they have to wear these massive shields and masks, and they look quite alien, don't they? They look quite scary in all of their equipment, and very difficult to communicate. And Rachel thought, what can I do to help these people to speak better to each other, the patients and the staff? So she devised the idea of putting messages onto an iPad or a tablet or onto a phone. And then the member of staff can show it to somebody and tell them what they want to do, tell them what's going to happen, reassure them, ask them questions and so on. And so she started this idea of the CardMedic project, and it started to get known. It started to be put into the newspapers, and that's where I read about it. I read it in a Guardian article and got in touch with Rachel and said, Rachel, have you thought about symbols or signing? And then we got together with the group of us and started doing some more work on it. So there is a now website and an app, and I'm hoping, I can see flashing messages coming up. So I'm hoping that Nadia and Alex will be picking up messages and that you can tell me things to stop and answer questions as well. But you could see on the photograph here, here's a member of staff talking to a patient, and she or he, I think it's a lady, lots of mask on here, very difficult to speak clearly. So she's holding a messages on the tablet and the patient's able to read that. So we want to ask you, we want to tell you about this, but also to ask you, as people living with Parkinson's or involved with people living with Parkinson's, we want to ask you about how we've adapted the cards, the messages into easier language, whether you think there's anything we can improve really, or how we are getting on with it. And we've got a couple of examples. So we've been looking at people who have, well, all of these things, communication difficulties, people who are deaf or blind, and as Alex has said, people with learning difficulties, people who may have acquired conditions such as some of you, head injury, dementia, Parkinson's, or have had a stroke, as Caroline said at the beginning. Sometimes people who don't have English as their first language, and people who are very sick and may be dying sometimes. Some symbols we are including might look like some of these. And this is an idea of a chart which has been developed with with a company called Widget and some other individuals. So if you were in hospital yourself and were unable to speak, you maybe could point to different symbols on there to tell the staff what you want to say. And just to reassure you, we're not keeping any info. I know the talk is being recorded today, but we are not keeping any information about you from this talk, but we want to hear your views. And if there's anything you want to say, stop, or if you want to pause at any time, please say so. So all you say to us is confidential, and we won't keep your names, but everything you say will be very helpful for us. And thank you for helping us. We're very grateful indeed. So that's the introduction to tell you a little bit about CardMedic and the background. And what we want to do is to show you some examples of the cards. We haven't got very long. So we've got 2 or maybe 3, what we call flashcards, but really they're a series of messages which we'd like to show you and to say, what do you think about this? And what do you think about this? So I think you're putting messages into the chat if you've got questions or if you've things you want to say, and then we can capture the chat afterwards, can't we?
Yep.
So I'm going to show you the first one. And the first one is called Hello, my name is. We put it into a PowerPoint to make it easy for you to see. But it would normally be shown on a phone, line by line, or a tablet or iPad, line by line. So it's called Hello, my name is. And as you will know, in the NHS, there's been a very big campaign for people who work in the NHS to always, when they come up to you, to say their name, because it didn't happen for a long time. And people found that that was very, it was insulting really, that someone comes up to you and starts to do something to you and they don't tell you their name. So there's been a big campaign, and rightly so. So we've adapted some language. So here's an example, and this might be shown just one line at a time, but this group goes together So I'm showing you an example here where it might say on the phone or the iPad, hello, my name is, and then you can type in your own name, or you can press a button and it will speak it out in a voice so that somebody can hear it. So if you are unable to read for some reason, the member of staff, if they know that about you, then they can press a button and it will speak it out. We can also translate into other languages, and that's another part of the project which is taking up a lot of time at the moment, to translate into different languages. But we've in effect translated it into easier language. Is somebody wanted to say something? Or?
No, I was going to say, Michelle, my wife is in a care home and I volunteer there. And we've got a couple of Chinese residents whose English is very poor. Yes. And we've got a Ukrainian who speaks no English, and his daughter comes in regularly to help with translation. And I can suddenly see this could transform the relationship that resident could have with the care staff, and vice versa.
Yes, indeed, Keith, you're absolutely right that we've already started to think that it started off looking at intensive care units in hospital, because that was where the most acute COVID cases were. But we're already thinking this could be so useful in care homes, and also for people who don't have English as their first language, because at the press of a button, they can translate into different languages. And that way, then obviously somebody without English can read it in Chinese or in Arabic or in a different language. So you're absolutely right. So Rachel Grimaldi and now the team around her are very much looking at other languages. So yes, I think you're spot on there. You. So if we look at the language here, either jot something in the chat or speak if that's okay, whichever. Is it clear? Are the words clear here? I mean, we hope they are, but there are cases when we know we can improve. Do people think there are words? Is there anything we can do to improve on the word side, the language side?
If anybody wants to join in, please just unmute, or if you've got a PC in front of you, press the space bar and that will unmute you temporarily.
Yeah. Because we really want to know your views. And sometimes I know one group I spoke to, they said, well, wouldn't it be nice if somebody said, instead of saying I am a doctor or I am a nurse or I am a therapist, that they might say to you if you were lying in bed, I am your therapist or I am your doctor for such and such a thing. And I don't know what people feel about that. And on the left,
I think personalization is really important. I think the closer you can get to the individual by saying I am your, yes. it makes it a much more firm connection.
It does. And although we know in hospital you might have lots of nurses, lots of doctors who come and go, but for that, what they're going to do with you for that moment, they are your doctor, aren't they? Mm. And the symbols we've chosen here on the left hand side, again, people have different views about those, and again I'd be really interested to know what people feel. Is there anything that we might put which is clearer? Are the doctor symbols clear? You know, they always wear stethoscopes, don't they? It's like a mark of a doctor, isn't it, to wear a stethoscope? But those symbols, they have no faces. How do people feel about that? Is that okay? Or would it be nicer if they had a face like the one above has, like eyes and nose and mouth?
I would say faces.
Yeah. So yeah.
Looks like Valerie wants to say something. Is that right, Valerie? Do you want to unmute yourself, Valerie? Is she there?
Well, did you want to say something?
Can you?
No.
I've got a couple of questions, Michelle.
Yes. Yes.
One is about the personalization. I wholeheartedly agree. It's great if that's the case, but my worry is that if we say I am your doctor, your nurse, and then tomorrow there's somebody else, it becomes meaningless and a source of frustration. I thought you were looking after me, but now somebody else, and I haven't seen that person for another 2 or 3 days. So I'd be a bit worried about that. And then I think, in terms of faces, yes, but they need to be very generic. In the sense that they're not sort of suggesting any particular ethnicity and so on. And I know these are sensitive points, but again, one wants that personal relationship with whoever the doctor or nurse is.
Yes, that's a really good point, Mark. And I think sometimes when we try to sort one thing, it does end up causing another confusion. You're absolutely right. So, and it's very difficult to meet the needs of all of those people with different communication difficulties, because what suits somebody who has learning difficulties may well be very different to somebody who's had a stroke, or somebody like some of you who are living with Parkinson's. And also, yes, the ethnicity point is something I was going to ask you about. These symbols of the faces, the skin color is sort of, well, can I describe it as vaguely pink? It's kind of pink. How would people feel if they were all different skin tone colors? Some dark brown, some middle brown, some pink, or another idea that some people have is that none of them should be human skin color. They should all be blue or orange. Now, I don't know if that's more confusing. So I don't know what you feel about that. Yeah.
Caroline, I see you've got your hand up. Do you want to unmute?
Well, I put it in the chat room already, but
Okay.
it may be something you're going to cover later. I wonder whether you found a method of asking the patient how they want to be addressed.
Ah, yes, good point. How do you want to be addressed? Yes, I think that.
There's some elderly people who really hate being called dear or duck or Jessie or whatever, and would really like to be called Mrs. Smith.
Alex and Nadia, do you think that we've got something in about that? I think that's a really good point, Caroline.
I don't think we have.
I don't think we have.
No.
But a very good point, Caroline.
I can't think how we've missed that, because that seems to me a really important thing that we should have addressed. Yeah. So thank you. That's a really good one. I will definitely get that in.
Margaret. I think Valerie may be still wanting to speak. Are you, Valerie? You're still on mute at the moment, Valerie. I think you need to press the button just next to that one. I think you've got your video button just to the left of that. You should have a mute. There you are.
Is that it?
Lovely.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. Hello,
I was a day patient in Addenbrooke's last Friday, and they did say straight away, how do we call you? Also, the nurse said to me, I'm going to be the nurse in charge of you today. And when I went in to have my procedure, this young man came up to me and he did say those things. I'm going to be the doctor that's going to do this to you today, sort of thing.
Okay.
So they were doing that. But also, no one in Addenbrooke's last week was wearing a white coat.
No, no. I think that since the pandemic, I think that people
they're all in scrubs things.
Scrubs. Yeah. They tend to wear scrubs, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Good point. Okay, let's have a look at some more.
I'm sorry, Margaret, I saw you had your hand up a moment ago.
Okay, good. Thank you for spotting that, Keith.
Okay.
I've put it on the chat.
Oh, you put it on the chat?
Yes, I thought that might be better.
Okay.
I think you may not.
I can't see that.
It needs to be addressed to everybody, Margaret.
Sorry?
The chat, I think you may have sent it. You haven't sent it to everybody, because I can't see it on the list.
Oh.
Ask the question, Margaret. Ask the question.
It's not so much a question as a comment.
Yes.
About the symbol by the nurse.
Yes.
A green cross is a symbol for a pharmacist,
Right.
or a pharmacy.
Thank you, Margaret. That was another question I had. If people understood a green cross, what did they understand by that? And you've answered that already. Thank you. So pharmacy, yeah. I agree with you, Margaret. I think it sort of means health, but I think often people think of it as a chemist or a pharmacy shop, don't they?
Yes, and it is restricted. If a pharmacy has to be a registered pharmacy to display that, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But,
not quite sure about that.
But isn't the Green Cross an equivalent
Green Cross
organisation in some parts of the world to the Red Cross?
Yes, I think. Well, I think in.
I mean, in the Middle East, it's the Green Cross, isn't it? And I'm talking about the symbol for the Red Cross equivalent.
Okay, well, so I think perhaps we need to research that a little bit more before using it to know exactly what we're doing. So this is exactly why it's so useful to talk to people and get different views. I'm going to move to but we've made a note of that, so thank you. I'll move to the next page because we've got lots of different pages here. So we wear this to keep, this will be the next line in the kind of series of messages here. We wear this to keep everyone safe. Is the language clear? And is the symbol clear? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, that's excellent. Now, sorry, it's difficult to hear would be the next sentence in this series of sentences. Does that make sense to people?
Yeah.
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 And what do people think about the symbol on the left-hand side with the ear and the blue lines and the red dotted line? Does that make sense?
Why is it not a cross?
Why is it not a cross? Yeah, I'm not quite sure who said that. Yeah, okay, so a cross, do you think a cross would be clearer?
Well, that's what we're used to, isn't it, when things are negative.
Okay, yes, so I think a red cross over the difficult to hear one. I think I agree with you there, Val. Let's have a look.
Thank you. Can I just check that this is both for patient and doctor?
Yeah.
But the doctor will be, or the nurse will be showing this to the patient. The patient is, in this case, this is for the doctor to be telling the patient. So it would not be, it's not at the moment for the patient to communicate back to the doctor, although we've got plans for that as well.
Okay, so just going back to, it's difficult to hear. Is it difficult to hear you, or it's difficult to hear more generally? Well,
and I think, yeah, so in other words, this is not clear, this message, is it? Really, it's saying that because of the PPE and the masks, it's difficult for us to hear each other, for both of us to hear each other. But I think that's what this should be saying. And I think we probably need to amend it to, it's difficult to hear each other. Yeah. I think that would make it clearer. Would that make it clearer?
And more personal.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, it might be it's difficult to hear the radio, or it might be
because there will be air conditioning and there'll be machinery on and all sorts.
Yes, yeah, machine going, making all sorts of noises as well. Okay, so this one says these flashcards can help us. So flashcards, I mean, I think it's a tricky word. What do people think of when you see the word flashcards? What does it make you think of normally?
I think of the things that I used with my kids to help them to start reading, and I wonder whether with your probably aiming this at a more mature audience, and they may have the same impression of flashcards as I have.
Yeah, and I think we've got used to calling them flashcards and we know what they are, but actually flashcards, I totally agree, especially having worked with children, is like individual cards that you are showing one by one, which is where the idea came from, that you're going through a series of cards, but actually it means like something physical that you're holding and showing, whereas actually we're talking about messages on a tablet or an iPad.
I was going to suggest messages.
So I mean, I actually like the word messages better than flashcards, but
messages give the impression that it's a two-way experience.
Okay, yeah. So is that good or not good?
Good, yeah, very good. Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And what about the symbol on the left-hand side? Obviously, we've got the logo now of CardMedic, and this is meant to represent an iPad or a tablet. But does it look like that? Just checking what people think.
I think it needs words on it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you wouldn't believe, Keith, how long and how much we've kind of debated and looked at and talked about these things and thought about it. And when you ask somebody else, they say, oh, it needs words on it. Obviously, it should have words on. And I think we've established that. It looks like a TV to me when I look at it now. It looks like a television. Okay, thank you. So let's go on. So we're nearly at the end of this series of messages. We can help you and you are safe. So we're really trying to reassure people that you are safe here. What do we think of the language? Do people think that that is clear? Does it make sense? Is it good language? I'm not sure you are terribly safe in hospital, to be honest, with MRSA and all sorts of other horrible infections, but that's another matter. But the idea is that it's reassuring to people, and I hope that comes over. And the symbol.
I think that's good.
Okay.
I suppose I have a reaction to "we can help." It'll probably say more about me than your communication, but that is that, okay, you can help, but it's help who, help what. I suppose, you know, we're here to help you. You are safe here.
Yes, okay, we're here to help you, or something like that, or we can help you. I think that's a good point, Mark. One of the difficulties that Nadia and Alex and I and the others who are helping is that we have sentences which we are converting to make them easier to understand. And sometimes you go so short that you end up being actually less clear. And it's always a balance, isn't it?
Yes. It's not easy, not easy. And you'll never get it right. You'll never get it 100% right.
No, but that, I think even just adding in one word there will help. Sorry, somebody going to say something?
I was just going to say, Michelle, someone's just put in the chat, I would use this only if you see that the patient needs reassurance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? Yeah. And if you felt that they were reasonably confident, you might not need to say it. What about the symbols on the left-hand side, the symbol of the two people, one with an arm around each other? What's people's reactions to that?
I'd be concerned if my doctor did that.
A little bit too friendly. I would be too. The idea is meant to be that, you know, you're in safe hands. But is there a better way people can think of getting that idea over?
You could repeat the symbol that you used when they introduced themselves, of the doctor or the nurse. Just repeat that symbol beside the message.
Okay, so something else instead. So I think somebody else suggested maybe just like two people shaking hands.
Yeah.
Although even with COVID now, we can't do that, can we?
Elbow bumping.
Bump elbows or something. Okay. So you can see how tricky it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is the last one on this set, and then we'll go to a different one. So you are here, and then they would say Adam Brooks Hospital. You are here in such and such a care home, or you are here in Adam Brooks Hospital. So there's space to type in a specific name, and hopefully that's pretty clear. So I think sometimes if you're very confused and you've been taken somewhere, you might not be quite sure where you are. And the idea is that you're giving them that explanation of where they are. And the symbol on the left-hand side is representing a hospital. How do people feel about that? Any thoughts, reactions on that?
Well, I've put in the chat again, it's something that would only be necessary if they were a new patient, obviously.
Yes.
It's obvious that, sorry.
No, that's a really good point. Yeah. You wouldn't need it every time, would you, if you had another doctor coming up the next day saying, hello, my name is da 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 da. You wouldn't need to go through saying again.
Or if they're confused, if they have dementia, for example, you might need to repeat it.
Yes, indeed. What do people think about the bed sort of floating in midair? Any thoughts on that? Or does that kind of represent hospital, all of that stuff going on there?
Not answering your question, but the stethoscope rather sort of threw me. And is that something you've just taken out of me?
Yes, what a thought. It also, somebody else said it looks like a spanner.
Yes, well, yes.
It would be one of those medical things for retractors or whatever they call them. I don't know. Okay, all right. So, but in theory, so in an ideal world, we would be able to insert a picture of wherever it was. So if it was Addenbrooke's, for instance, which is obviously local to most of you, we could put in a photo of the front of Addenbrooke's Hospital, which I think then would have some meaning for people, or the front of the care home, for instance. And that would obviously take some work for the IT technologists to figure out how to do that. But in theory, it should be possible. And that, I think, would be very reassuring, wouldn't it, to see something familiar. But we're not there yet. Okay, so that's fantastic. That's really excellent. And I can see there's lots of different chat things going on. So if people are okay, I'm going to show another card. How are we doing for time, Keith?
You're fine. You're absolutely fine.
Fine, good.
20 minutes, 20 minutes.
Sorry?
15, 20 minutes maybe.
Perfect. The other card I want to show you is called, it's horrible acronyms, I'm afraid they use them all the time. So it's DNAR CPR. So it means do not attempt to resuscitate. And it's talking about cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So no doubt you're all familiar with the concept. And I don't know if anybody's unsure of talking about this or anxious about it. If you are, please say so and I'll choose something else. But obviously it's an important topic to talk about, and I'd like to show you the card because it's important. So if everybody's okay, I'll show that. It's longer. We may not get through it all because it's long, and just give me a shout when time's nearly close to being finished, Keith. Because obviously I don't want to run over. So I'm going to skip over that bit. It would start in this way. So this is a discussion between a doctor, it would be a doctor and a patient. And the doctor is thinking, this is a very poorly patient, and that they want to talk about do not attempt to resuscitate because they feel that the patient is so poorly that it's not going to be helpful to do CPR, cardiopulmonary resuscitation on the patient. And some people have discussed this in advance and made their views clear on how they feel about this. And you may have done that yourselves, I don't know. It's a good idea to have discussed it before you get to hospital when you're very poorly, because it's hard to think about when you're very poorly. But sometimes the doctors actually want to say, we don't think this is a really good idea because it's a rough process. So we had to do a card about this, which is a tricky subject. So the doctor might say, are you worried? I've already got issues with the first line, to be honest, but are you worried? Yes or no? So is the language clear? This is the beginning of a conversation about do not attempt to resuscitate. Is this language clear or is it not clear?
Sorry, go on. Go on, Mark.
Sorry,
No,
Nadia.
you go ahead. That's all right.
I was just, I'm not clear, Michelle, what the framing of this is. So, you know, I can just, you know, I'm lying in a hospital bed and somebody says, "Are you worried?" You know,
Yeah.
yes, no. Well, what's the context?
Yeah.
I mean, is it, you know, and how do you frame it? Because that must be incredibly difficult.
Yes, yes. Because
Or,
if you come
or is the idea that you do,
yeah.
sorry, or is the idea that you don't frame it, you lead into it gently? And I can understand either way, but I just, I would be interested in your thinking.
Well, I mean, it's not an experience I've had because I'm not a doctor, but I think that the doctors who are involved with it wrote the cards, and we have then tried to kind of adapt it into easier language. So this is the way we've adapted their introduction into it. So really they're saying something like, your condition is very serious and we need to think about resuscitation. And that might have been their intro lines. I can't remember now, Nadia and Alex might remember. And we've adapted it to saying, are you worried? But I think you're right, it lacks context now. And it's quite unclear, isn't it?
Yeah. I think if I wasn't worried to begin with, I would be by somebody presenting me with the question, are you worried? I'd wonder what I needed to be worried about. So I agree looking at that again.
I've actually been involved. I've been involved in one of these conversations related to my wife on 2 occasions now. Okay. And the chances are that the patient isn't going to be in a situation where they can actually make any sense of this. The conversation is almost invariably being held with a member of the family.
Yeah.
And the chances are that you would have had the discussion earlier. So I'm not actually sure that this is meaningful for somebody who is critically ill, palliative.
I think that's true, Keith. I mean, I think we just took our guidance, sorry to interrupt them, from the cards that we were given to adapt, and the palliative care team had written this card. So there may be people who were in hospital who had COVID at this time, because it was from that context, who were very poorly with COVID and who were still able to make a decision about it. But obviously, it's very likely the family would be involved. So I think given that we know that this bit's got a lot to be improved, any comments on the symbols?
I think
someone's put in the chat, I think thumbs up or down is more commonly used than nodding or shaking head nowadays.
Okay, yeah, and I think in another card, which we haven't shown you, I think we got yes with a tick and no with a cross. And I totally agree. I think these symbols are not clear. And even the worried one, I think it looks like they've been out for a run and they've got hot and sweaty or something. It's very hard to portray the idea of worried. So we know we can improve on those.
Margaret, do you want to say something?
Yes, I thought that the picture of the worried patient looked much happier than the picture of the not worried patient. So I would have had them the other way around.
Yes, you're completely right. So where it says, are you worried? Yes, then there's a happy face. Oh dear, that doesn't make sense, does it? Well spotted, Margaret, well spotted. Thank you. Yeah, we know this needs improvement. So it's fantastic. So we want to help. I think, again, we need to add in, we want to help you. Otherwise, it's kind of not in a context. And again, we don't think the doctor should be putting his arm around you. Now, we want you to get better. Kind of stating the obvious, I think, really, but any thoughts on the words or the pictures, the symbols?
Again, you've got the green cross.
Yes, which I could see where that symbol has come from, but I think we think that the green cross is not particularly clear. We want you to get better, I think is fine. It's reassuring people, but it is also very obvious. What about the two people in the man in bed, or the person in bed and the person giving them a drink? Any thoughts on that?
Nope.
Val, does it look like you want to say something? You want to unmute yourself, Val? The one next to that, Val, I think is the sound one, the microphone one. It's got a little microphone. It's on the left hand. It's right in the left hand.
Mute.
Yes, got it now. Yeah. What did you want to say, Val?
It looks to me as though he's rejecting the medicine that's being given to them.
Oh, yes, good point. Like somebody's trying to give them something and they're saying like, oh, no, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, isn't it?
Good observation.
Yeah, good observation. And I've had various other observations, for instance, that the person holding the drink looks quite sinister. There we go. Okay, let's have a look at the next one. So this is difficult. So really this is trying to say, and perhaps it's oversimplified, this conversation about do not attempt to resuscitate is a difficult topic. Yeah. It's a difficult conversation. But again, I think it's perhaps oversimplified. So I don't know if you agree with that. You can put a thumb up if you think that's true, if we've oversimplified it.
Yes, I do, because I mean, you know, what is difficult?
Yeah.
Is it that we need to have a difficult conversation? We need to talk about a difficult subject or matter or issue or something. Yeah, because the question as it is says, well, for whom is it difficult? Yeah. And does it concern me? In a way, it's not sufficiently personalized. You know, this is, I'm not suggesting these words, but this is a difficult conversation about you.
Oh, yeah.
It's the most difficult, probably.
Yeah, I think that's very good. Yeah, about you, because I think, or about your condition. I mean, you can say it in so many different ways, but
yes,
something like that, which makes it personal to their situation and how serious it is for them at that time. So yeah, I agree with you. So we need to talk about it.
That's
and again, we've fallen into our trap, which we really never should do, and that is that using the word it means you've no idea, if you can't remember the last few messages, you've no idea what it is. We need to talk about what, you know, the weather, what's on TV, or we need to talk about do not attempt to resuscitate, is what we need to say, something like that. Do people agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. And the symbols on the left hand side, or any other thoughts? Mark, you're going to say something?
Yeah. Yes, I think this does need to be a lot more specific. Otherwise, you never end up framing the question, which is we need to talk about, you know, your serious condition or your, you know, difficult state of health. I don't know what the words are, but throughout this sequence, I don't know what we're talking about yet.
No, I agree.
You've got to put the word prognosis in there, surely.
Yeah, somehow, yes, got to put that into prognosis. Oh, that's a difficult one to translate into kind of
accessible. Yeah.
But yeah,
I was going to say it's a difficult word for most people because some people wouldn't understand the word.
No, thank you. Yeah. And we do get to talk about the specifics. Condition, maybe. We do. So here we are. We've got it, but then there's too many words here, and we've made it more specific, Mark. But I think it is too many words. So we want to talk about CPR. Doctors do CPR when someone's heart stops. Doctors try to start the heart again. Some people call it resuscitation. And we've battled about or discussed about whether we should leave in CPR. Are people familiar with what CPR is? And here's a little picture diagram showing somebody doing it. Is that the best thing to leave in CPR, or is it better to say resuscitation? Any thoughts on that?
What about continued treatment?
Well, it's not so much treatment. It's like when someone's heart stops, you know, when the crash team comes and they start doing up and down and up and down on their chest. It's that particularly that we're talking about. So it's not just ordinary treatment. It's this resuscitation when you do the compressions up and down on someone's chest to get their heart started again.
Yes, I understand.
So it's a specific situation. So we could split these up so it's not so many words. Is the picture clear though? Does that immediately make you think, oh yes, they're doing CPR?
Yeah,
And that's not always a doctor who does that.
No, good point, because it could be any of us. I mean, I'm trained. I could do it out on the street if I had to. I should do.
That
Anybody.
looks as though it could be out on the street.
Okay, so yeah, it does actually.
So,
Doctors. Sorry.
CPR. Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry, Tricia. So far, we've talked about you, the patient. We're now talking about CPR. At what point, do we bring the two together? So it's CPR and me we're talking about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I imagine it's the next chart, but my question is, are we leaving it a bit too late to
we need
bring the two together? But anyway.
Bring in the CPR a bit earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it?
I was
so
going
what
to
do you
say.
think? Sorry?
I was going to say CPR is done when someone's heart stops.
Yeah.
So that it doesn't have to say doctors.
No, thank you. Good point. I think we will change that. I think that's good. So what do you think? So they just want to get the views, what they think about CPR. Because some people might say straight away, I don't want anybody to do it to me. Or some people say, come what may, whatever you think, I want you to do it. If my heart stops, I want you to do CPR, even if you don't think it's successful. But as Keith was saying earlier, often this conversation is had much earlier, before people are very ill, and also with their family. And I've been also in that situation myself, as being asked as a member of as a spouse.
However, during COVID, the families weren't there. They weren't allowed in, so it would be with the person.
Yep, that's also a very good point. That doesn't mean that they wouldn't be consulted, because obviously the doctors and nurses would be ringing the family frequently, particularly if things were looking very critical. But you're absolutely right that they wouldn't be in by the bedside. Sorry, Alex, were you going to say something?
I just wanted to just clarify a point, because I'm making notes here, and I just wanted to make sure that I'd understood a couple of the last comments correctly. So I think we took the point that everything was very general and that things weren't happening in the right order. Would I be right in thinking that actually the card sort of needs to say, you know, something about the person's health? So we're worried that you're not getting better. We need to talk about what we will do if your heart stops. So to bring that person and the topic together, is that right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's good, isn't it? So then we're almost out of time, I think, but we can stop anytime. This is now explaining that CPR is a long and painful process for patients. Now, if your heart stopped, obviously you would have no idea if they did CPR on you, you'd be unconscious. But they're trying to say in advance, doctors are often accused of not giving us enough information. But here they're telling you that if they're going to do CPR, it's a long and painful process. So it's going to bruise your body, make your body very sore. How do people feel if you're told in advance that CPR is going to be long and painful? What do you feel about that?
How is the patient, if this is a patient with communication problems, how are they going to get the message that they're thinking back to you if they've got speech problems or whatever?
Yeah, it's a good point, and we are we need the other side of the conversation, don't we? And we've only been looking at the one side, and we have plans to also then have messages, which could be the patient's messages. But the difficulty of that is that then you're almost putting words into their mouth. We know what the doctors are going to say because this is what they would normally say. Sure. They told us. But of course, the patient might say anything, and that's the difficulty. Alex, go on. What are you going to say?
One of the things that we've been pushing for is that I used to work in a hospital setting, and one of the things we were very keen for doctors to do was refer to speech and language therapy earlier, so that people did have some tools for self-expression in place, because often it's that level of specialist assistance that's needed. So it may be that we need to think about flagging that up more on some of those cards, perhaps, because I think you're right that we do need to at least sort of acknowledge the fact that this is a one-way process.
Yes, and that's where we came. That was our brief, if you like, on this in this situation. But we absolutely are aware that the patient's not got a voice in this at the moment. This is purely them being given information, if you like. So it's a mountain to climb in terms of so much work to do, but just looking at the pictures or the symbols on the left-hand side, and I'm probably going to come to the end here.
Oh, did you want to?
Yes, I'm sorry, I'm going to make a personal point. I'm a cardiac patient under Papworth. My only chance of survival is CPR, and you know, the not electric shock therapy, sorry, you know, the
defibrillators.
Yes, thank you. Can't remember the words. Early onset dementia going on in my head. But, you know, frankly, being told that CPR is long and painful, here I am in a hospital bed. I've had a long and painful experience to actually get here. Are you trying to put me off CPR? And if so, is it length and pain? I've suffered a lot. I'm role playing now. I'm not, but I find this a bit odd, because you know, the nature of many conditions are long and sort of painful. The question for me is it worth it in the end? Is my chance of survival such that I continue to have some quality of life? So for me, and I'm not a clinician, I'm not a medic, telling me that it's long and painful, I'm thinking, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
You sound as though you're trying to put me off, and I'm not sure that's the message that we should be getting across. But anyway.
Well, if I just quickly whiz through the other pages, I think in a way we are trying to, or this set of messages is trying to put people off. So we don't want to hurt you. Sometimes CPR does not work, and if CPR did work, it would hurt you. So we're saying that they would end up, if it did work, you'd end up being very bruised. But as you say, a price worth paying, perhaps, definitely, if you want to live.
Sorry,
yeah.
Can I just check? I'm just wondering if this is an ordering issue again, whether actually if the question, whether the first piece of information needs to be that CPR does not always work, so that it is at least, because I think the idea is to give people the information and know the pros and cons, but I think that needs to be clearer, and I wonder if there's some reordering. That might not be right, but
I think you're right, Alex. I think you're right. To kind of lay out the scene first and then say, look, these are the pros and these are the cons, if you like, and it's then you can make a decision. Whereas actually it's been unclear. So I mean, we did this with the best of intentions, and then it's only by talking to people like yourselves that we think, oh no, we haven't got the order right here, we haven't made it clear. So you can see how we can improve it, which is brilliant. Can I just ask, on the heart symbol, the one with the blue lines, are people familiar with that kind of picture? Does that look like no? Is somebody saying no?
The little red heart, that's the heart.
Yeah, the heart here, and then these blue lines going up and down.
I haven't seen those before.
Okay, so we're trying to get across the idea of your heart stopping, and wondering if is there a better image, or
it's probably the trace then stopping and going straight as it would do if your heart has stopped.
Yes.
Yeah. blue line kind of going flat, if you
Yes.
like.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's good. I think we probably, I mean, there's a little bit more to this set of messages, but we probably have run out of time, Keith, I think, haven't we?
I must admit, I'm amazed at how quickly 50 minutes has disappeared here. Which, but
It always is.
I
When
think,
it's such an interesting discussion, and
I think it has been a very interesting discussion. I think it's been good to be involved at an early stage with you and to see sort of where you're going and how it's going to develop. Has anybody got any further thoughts or comments on what we've seen today? You know, would anybody like to be involved on a more regular basis with the team on developing?
thank you, Keith, because we're hoping to have a mixed forum of different people with different conditions going forward in the future, who would be like a kind of like a stakeholder forum or something that we could come back to and say with different ideas and say, what do you think about this? Tell us about that. How can we make this better? So yeah, definitely we'd be interested to know if we put that idea to you, whether anybody would be interested in joining that on an ongoing basis.
I think keep in touch, Michelle. I think,
Yeah.
you know, we can certainly put the note out of the group, and if anybody wants to be involved on a regular basis, you know, there'll be other people that have not been able to attend today that will watch the video, and that they can make contact.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, well, that's great.
That's super. Mark, do you want to say anything in wind up?
Yeah, well, I run the risk of just repeating what Keith said, but thank you. Very stimulating. I think you know, very relevant to us all at some sort of stage or other, and it's a very complex area, and you know, please don't take our feedback as negative. We're very positive about the endeavour that you're embarked upon, and it seems so simple, but actually it's not. So well done, and thank you for coming along. It's great, and let's keep in touch.
Yeah.
So
that's brilliant. Thank
a
you
virtual
so
clap.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, team.
Thank you,
All of
everyone.
Really good. And everybody, we will see you again in a couple of weeks' time with Trevor Woolard. Thank you all so much, Michelle.
Thanks,
Thank
Keith.
you, Nadia,
Thank you.
Alex.
Have a good day.
Thank
All the
you.
best. Have a good day.
Bye. Bye.
All the best. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.